Good evening, I'm Claudia Liza Armah. Welcome to 5 News Tonight. Our top story, how thousands of rape victims are being let down. We'll be speaking to the CPS and to a woman who says she was failed by the authorities. Also on the programme, Wales imposes a strict 2-week fire break in the fight against COVID-19. Good evening. Why are rape convictions in England and Wales at an all-time low when the number of rapes being reported is at a record high? Well, getting an answer to that question is partly why the Crown Prosecution Service, which makes the final decision on whether to prosecute someone for rape, today outlined new guidelines for its lawyers. The new measures are designed to make them more aware of how sexual behaviour has changed in the digital age. For example, for many young people, sending explicit pictures is normal, as is meeting up for what's known as hookups, one-night stands. And new guidelines say neither of these nor many similar behaviours should be factors when deciding whether to bring charges or not. And it's desperately clear that something needs to be done. Take a look at this. 4 years ago, 2,991 suspects were convicted of rape or a lesser offence in England and Wales. By last year, that had halved, falling to a record low of 1,439 convictions. And go back to 2016 again, and there were 5,190 rape prosecutions. Last year, that fell to another record low of 2,102. That's only 40% of the number of prosecutions compared to 3 years before. Well, earlier I spoke to 2 women with a close interest in today's announcement by the CPS. Katie Russell works for the charity Rape Crisis, which supports victims of rape, and Bonnie Turner, who was allegedly raped 4 years ago. I say allegedly because police wouldn't prosecute the man who attacked her, so he was never convicted. I began by asking Bonnie about her reaction to these changes and a warning some of her details are distressing. And Bonnie also waived her right to anonymity, which every victim of sexual offence normally receives, to speak to us. In terms of your case and the allegations that you've made against the perpetrator, it was heavily based on messages. If you can talk about it, can you explain what happened there and how that was treated by police in more detail, if you can? Did that make you feel? In terms of the announcement that has been made today, what difference would it make to people like Bonnie who are coming forward with these kinds of allegations? In terms of these new changes, in terms of how police and the Crown Prosecution Service will include digital information, will this change things for you? Is this something which means you can revisit your case? Or what does this mean for you? Bravely.
I think what's happening.
Well, earlier I spoke to Siobhan Blake, who's the rape lead for the Crown Prosecution Service. I began by asking her whether these new measures need to go further. As it stands, we are at a record low when it comes to convictions in England and Wales. This is something that surely is unacceptable for the CPS.
Have to fulfil before we can take cases forward.
Most of the guidance that you are issuing revolves around the digital world. What goes on in the digital world should not be held against people who are making these allegations when they come forward. We've been living in this digital world for decades now. Why were these changes not introduced earlier? And some would say that actually these are really basic things that prosecutors should have been taken into account a long time ago.
Of our life.
Well, of course, it is a very difficult subject. If you want any more help or information on what we have been talking about, you can contact Rape Crisis. Their website should be on your screen right now. OK, on to some other news tonight. And Wales is to go into a second national lockdown for 2 weeks from Friday, with people urged to stay at home. The First Minister called it a fire break and said they had a small window to act together to save lives. All non-essential shops will close, as well as pubs, restaurants and hairdressers. But businesses say they fear for their future. The lockdown coincides with half-term next week, but some pupils will stay at home for longer than the usual break. Our chief correspondent, Tessa Chapman, reports. Tessa for us tonight. And Catherine, what's the latest? OK, we have lost Catherine Jacob there reporting from Manchester, but let me bring you the latest from the Republic of Ireland. And it's being reported that Ireland's Taoiseach will announce a nationwide lockdown this evening. The government there has been meeting to make a final decision on a circuit breaker, which could see non-essential shops close and bars, restaurants and cafes allowed to serve takeaways only. Michael Martin will address the nation shortly there. OK, you're watching 5 News Tonight, still to come. Endometriosis, that's coming up after the break. Welcome back. Now, try to imagine feeling pain so excruciating that you nearly pass out. Imagine feeling pain like that every day. And every time you go to hospital or your GP, your condition isn't correctly diagnosed and the pain just doesn't stop. Well, for thousands of women who suffer from endometriosis, this isn't something they have to imagine. This is their life. Endometriosis affects 1 in 10 women and it can cause infertility and other serious medical problems. It's rarely diagnosed quickly. Sometimes it can take years. And for all that time, a woman suffering from it will be in a great deal of pain. Well, today an influential committee of MPs said that treatment and diagnosis time for this condition urgently needed to improve. For talking to us, especially about something so personal, so difficult to live with. And Barbara, if I can start with yourself, many people, despite how common it can be in women, still might not understand or know what endometriosis is. Can you explain what it is like living with that condition? Well, Bhavni said that actually your story might be different and there could very well be elements which are different, but what is similar is how long that diagnosis took for you as well. Could you explain what happened there? To get pregnant to deal with the problem when really it's something that should have been diagnosed there and then. How did this impact you? How did this impact your everyday life? Have been involved in this inquiry. I'm so sorry to hear that you're now infertile because of this. What needs to change moving forward to help the many women going through this? That's it from 5 News Tonight. Claire Nazir has the weather next. Have a good night. Bye-bye.